Hello everyone, welcome to the Paint and Picnic virtual workshop. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be making a super cute sunflower bouquet in a mason jar. All of the paints that we have right here are going to be listed down below in the description box, so don't worry if you miss anything. So today we're going to be starting off with 11 by 14 canvas, and we're going to be in a landscape position. After that, we are going to be outlining with a pencil. You can use any pencil or an art pencil. It really doesn't matter. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be starting off on the left-hand side of the canvas. And we're just going to be very lightly sketching out a rectangle. Now, I want you to leave the very bottom side of the rectangle open because we're going to be making this into the bottom of our mason jar. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take from the left-hand side and connect it to the right with this swooping motion. This is just going to make it look like the jar is sitting. After that, we're going to go through and we're going to make the top of our mason jar, or like the lid portion of the mason jar. So we're going to do this by making a upward curving rectangle. And don't worry about any of these lines. You don't need to erase them. You don't need to worry about if they're overlapping or anything like that, because we're just going to be painting over all of this anyways. After that, we're going to go through and we're going to make our line. This is going to create the illusion of the table and the wall behind. It doesn't really matter how far up or down the mason jar you make this line. Just keep in mind that anything that is below that line is going to be your table, and anything above the line is going to be the top. After that, we're going to go through and we're just defining our mason jar. So as you can see, I've made an oval right in the middle, and then I'm going down and I'm completing the oval from that line we created earlier. And this is just going to make it look like the bottom of the mason jar and the top of the water line. We're going to go through also and make just a couple of little marks here. This is just to remind us that this is where we're going to be creating some texture later on with the paints. After that, we're going to go through and we're going to add all of our stems for our bouquet. We're going to make 3 lines to the right and 2 lines to the left, crossing them as we go through. After that, I'm going to go through and mark these first 2 lines. These are going to be flowers. The next 2 lines that cross are going to be our foliage. So we're going to go through with these heart-like swipes and motions, and this is going to create a leaf-like pattern. Stop just as you hit the lid of the mason jar. That's what we're going to do to both of these stems, and it's just really quick like that. After that, we're going to go through and we're going to be making these centers for our sunflowers. Now, it doesn't really matter how big or small you make these centers. Just keep in mind that this is going to create a general shape for your sunflower. After we've created the centers, we're going to go through and add on our petals. Now, it's okay if our petals don't look perfect right now. This is, once again, just a rough estimate. We're going to be painting over these and making them more of like a sunflower shape. Right now, they look kind of more like daisies, but that's okay. Just very lightly going through. On the sunflower that is facing to the left, do be careful that those sunflower petals do not overlap our foliage. We want to make sure that we're keeping that one kind of separated. After that, we're going to go through and we're going to be making lines around the centers of our sunflower. This is just another mark to remind us that there's going to be texture here later and that we're going to be defining that space. After that, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to redefine all of those lines for the stems of our flowers down the mason jar, making sure each flower has its own stem. All right, and then last final touches, we're going to be adding the little leaves that you see popping out of the sunflowers just at the top of the flower portion. And now we're going into paint. So we're starting off with this blue and a clean brush, and we're going to be working on our table. Now, our table is going to be a more abstract looking table. So I want you guys to really be sparse with this paint. You do not want to be overspreading it. You don't want it to be completely covering. You just want to be making these thick and small lines all across the canvas, creating this definition and this more abstract look. After that, we're going to be going in with the blue and the white. You can see how it looks on the paintbrush here. Doesn't really have to be perfectly mixed, just kind of glubby and on there, and we're just going to add it in that same way. After that, we're going to be going in with this green. I'm just showing you again the technique. We're just making these little lines all over the canvas, kind of creating this definition. After that, we're going in with this beautiful gray. You can still use the same brush, and we're just going in once again and creating this definition. After that, we're going to be going in with this white, and we're being pretty generous with the white here. This is what's going to allow us to really mix the colors and spread it around the canvas and create this really beautiful abstract look. Okay, after that, we're going to be going in with our brush, and we are just mixing that all in. And this is just trial and error, you guys. Do be careful not to get too far into your mason jar. We'll be painting that later, so it's okay if you make a couple mistakes, but do try to avoid it if you can. Now, the next thing that I'll say about this process is it's really just trial and error, and, you know, just whatever you want it to look like. So just spread your stuff around the canvas and call it good. This is me showing if you have way too much paint, sometimes that happens. It's okay to take it off the paintbrush. Just go ahead and use a paper towel. All right, we're going back in with that darker color, and we're just adding a little bit more to it because I felt like this side had kind of gotten a little bit too more gray. And you can play with it like this as you go along. That's the greatest part, I feel like, about art, is that you can kind of make it your own. So if you want to add a little bit more blue, add a little bit more blue or green or however you want it to look. All right, as you can see, I'm going in with just a little bit of a darker blue. This is going to be 100% of the blue that we used earlier, and we're making that shadow for our jar, because if we really did have our jar sitting there, there would be a shadow. We want this to kind of outline the entire bottom of the jar and then slightly go out to the right of the jar, just making this ovally shape. After that, we're going in with some green again. As you can see, I've grabbed a clean brush, and this is where we are doing our stems. Now, I want you guys to start from the bottom to the top. That way, if you have too much paint on your brush or your stroke is too large, it doesn't really matter too much, because we're going to be covering the bottom of this when we go back through and we add the water to the bottom of our mason jar. As you can see, I'm going to be using that technique all the way through, in exception to the foliage. The foliage is going to be the opposite direction. So as you can see, I'm just very, very lightly going through and adding that to it. And now I'll show you with the foliage. As you can see, I'm starting from the bottom to the top, and then I'm going back through and I'm going top to bottom, as you can see. There we go. And that's because we want that foliage to be quite thicker. So bottom to top for the sunflower stems, and then top to bottom for the foliage. And this just is an easier technique, so you don't have to worry about being super steady with your lines. I know that can be a harder part for people who are beginners, or maybe if you just have a shaky hand, right? Okay, we're just adding this in here. This is where we want to be just very careful. All right, now we're going in with this beautiful gray color and a clean brush. And we're just going to be letting our stems dry, and we're going to be working on the backdrop. Now we're doing the same sort of abstract look on this top part, but we're going to be going vertical instead of horizontal. And we want to be very, very, very sparing with this gray. We do not want this to be a dark gray color. And we're going to go through with a clean brush now, and we're just going to swipe that away. You can see how I've kind of just taking whatever paint's there. Some parts are darker, some parts are lighter. It really doesn't matter. And then I'm going in with this white over top and just blending it out. We don't really want to add too much more gray. We want this to just be very subtle, very beautiful. This is going to be another moment where you're able to kind of play with the look. If you want to go into more gray, you can. Just be very cautious not to turn the whole canvas gray or to get too much everywhere. And of course, you can go up and down, side to side. Just make sure that this is really blended, because the more you blend, the better it's going to look. And you can see I've kind of sped this up here because it will be a little bit time consuming depending on the type of look you want. After that, we're going to be mixing these two colors until we get this very light, beautiful blue color. And we're going to use it to start outlining our mason jar. And we're just very, very, very carefully going down the side. This is one of the few times during this process that you're going to want to really take your time with it to find your mason jar, make it really nice, really smooth, because that's how glass is in real life. So that's the type of look that you're going to want to look at for your mason jar. All right, and then after that, we're going to go through and we're going to be doing the lid. Now, do be careful because there's a chance that your stems aren't as dry yet. So do be careful that you're not mixing too much of the green and the blue. But once again, we're just very lightly tracing our mason jar, going around, making sure that it looks nice. Okay, and then after that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to outline the bottom. Now here's the fun part. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start working on this beautiful water line. So I'm just going through and I'm just making that circular oval shape, and I've just taken one little dab of my brush, and we're just rubbing it in. We want that to be really blended, really circular. We want that texture going on there. And then we can go back through and start adding more of those lines going down, creating this watery look. After that, I'm going to go in with a clean brush, and I'm just going to swipe any leftover paint. Now we're going to be going in with this beautiful dark color and same brush. And we're just going to be making little strike lines down, creating this really beautiful look on the sides of our jar. You can see how I've just kind of gone through the spots that you would naturally see lines, highlighting the side of the water line, highlighting the side of the jar. And we're all working on mainly the left side. The right side, you can put a little bit of marks there, as you can see that I've done, but we don't want these to be big marks. We want the majority of our shading to sit on that left-hand side. After that, we're going to be going in with blue, and we're just going to be adding any blue anywhere we feel like we need it. Spots that, maybe the paint dried a little bit thinner and we want a little bit more definition, or maybe we just want a little bit more blue in that spot because we want it to look more like water. Just whatever starts to look nice, but we're just covering that bottom portion. After that, we're going to be going in with white, and now we're going to be highlighting the edges of the jar, kind of like how the light would illuminate on the glass. And same thing, we're just highlighting anywhere that would highlight from the sun. So we're going to highlight the left-hand side of the water line. We're going to highlight the left-hand side of the lid. We're going to highlight the left-hand side of the bottom of the jar. And just very, very lightly adding this white illusion. After that, we're going to be going through and we're doing our petals. This is my favorite part. So you're going to want to be very careful again. This is starting the base of our colors. So you're going to be adding this bright yellow to the middle / outlining of the flowers. Now, as you can see, obviously you could take this a little bit further, but we will be adding some other colors to kind of define the sunflower. So for right now, just go ahead and add in all of your little flower pieces. This might take you a while, and that's okay. And it's also okay if the flowers overlap. I know that can kind of freak people out sometimes, but that's okay as well. Just make sure that we're not covering our foliage. All right, now after that, we're going to go through and we're going to be adding that second layer. Like I said, we're going to take the yellow and the white, and we're just adding this second layer of petals to the inside of our sunflower. So as you can see, we're just making little marks that look like petals to the inside ring of the sunflower, creating this sunflower petal definition. Okay, and then after that, we're going to be going in with this beautiful brown color, and we're going to be making the center of our sunflower. So this is really fun. We're going to be stippling, but we're stippling and turning our brush. So it kind of creates this round, beautiful center. And feel free to dip into your brush multiple times. We want this center to go from light to dark. It's okay if you get a little bit of yellow on there. That's just going to create a very beautiful blend. You know, you're just wanting to go all the way around, and we're just creating this dark center and fanning out the sides. Do be careful that you don't over cover your sunflower petals, because once you've added a lot of that darker brown, it's going to be really hard to take it back. But do put yourself into the ends of that and make it as dark as you can in the center. And this is one of my favorite parts. I think it's kind of fun to twirl the brush around like this, and it creates a really cool definition. Okay, and then after that, we're going to be going in with this beautiful green and white color. And as you can see, you just kind of have it on the brush. And this is going to be us painting our leaves for our foliage, finally. So as you can see, I'm just very lightly going through and defining each leaf. And it's okay if it's not perfect. We just want to give it more of that leafy feel. And if you feel like you have too big of a brush, you can switch too. I went ahead and switched my brush right here. And as you can see, it made kind of a smaller leaf pattern. And I liked that a little bit better. And this is another one of those ones where you can kind of play with it. If you want to make the leaves a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, that's fine. Just make sure that you're keeping that general circle or heart-like shape to each of the foliages. Okay. And also be careful that we're not going too far into our mason jar. We don't want this covering that beautiful lid we just did. We just want it to barely touch the bottom, creating an illusion that it goes deeper down into the jar. Okay, and after that, we're going to be going in with this beautiful gold color, and this is what we're going to use to define our sunflower petals. So we're just going to make this very beautiful leaf-like pattern over the petals we've already made, and this color is gorgeous, you guys. It has little flakes of like gold shimmer or like a glitter to it, so it's just going to create this absolutely beautiful illusion. After you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and add our last little final touches. If you remember, we had added these little itty bitty leaves to the outside of our sunflowers. This is what we're going to be adding now. It's just going to create this little pop of definition and look kind of like a real sunflower. All right, and after that, we're just going to go through, adding a little bit more. And it's okay to add 1 or 2 more leaves, But you do want it to look very leaf-like if at all possible. Try to add that little pointed end and add it where you think it would look natural. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you like your sunflower painting.